Hello, everyone. Welcome to the inaugural session of the Climate and Sustainability Constellation of the Ideas Office. I am Siddharth Bhaskar. I teach business and economics at the Jindal Global Business School. And this is a session where we will discuss a very interesting book. It's a book talk, which is of the book titled Net Zero Trio by Mr. Labanya Prakash Jena and Mr. Prasad Ashok Thakur. But before we go to the book, I would like to speak a bit about the constellation because it's an inaugural session. So, I think we should introduce the constellation first. So, the Climate and Sustainability Constellation of the Ideas Office is co-led by me and Professor Ashita Davar of the Jindal Global Law School. And this constellation basically will try to inculcate all the different aspects of climate and sustainability that we see around the world, which includes the politics, economics, employment, finance, indigenous communities, and the pedagogy of climate. So, we have just started, but we are already working on some interesting projects like climate justice, carbon credits, and indigenous communities and how climate change affects them, and also adaptation and how it affects the job market, and so on. And we will also focus in this particular constellation, along with all the other important issues. We are also going to focus on climate finance, which is one of the important topics which we will discuss today because Labanya and Prasad have dealt with it in their book quite comprehensively. So climate finance, as we know, is talking about money that is coming to fight climate change, and we all understand that we need capital and money to fight the problem of climate change. So climate finance is one another important thing we are going to deal in this constellation. So in this constellation, we are going to do research projects. We are going to conduct talks. We are going to involve students as well further down the line to teach them and also involve them in research projects. We are going to write op-eds and you know other important sources of disseminating information. So these are the things the climate and sustainability constellation aims to do. We have four people in this constellation as of now. So already this is me and Ashita have introduced. We also have Professor Anjana Thampi, who is there with us right now, and she is also a research fellow at the constellation. She is from the Jindal Global Law School. And we also have Professor Anjana Ramanathan, who is also from the Jindal Global Law School and will be a research fellow in the constellation. So we have four people in the constellation right now. And we hopefully further down the line, we might get more people to work with us. So the aim of the constellation is to basically have a center for climate and sustainability at Jindal University so that anybody else who is interested in working in this field can connect with us and also work with us on different aspects of climate change. Okay, so this was about the constellation, and now we come to the event today, which is the book talk of the book Net Zero Trio. So we have our guest with us, Mr. Labanya Prakash Jena and Mr. Prasad Ashok Thakur. We have you have already seen their introductions in the flyer we sent for the event, and so the what we will do is that we will have a short presentation by the authors of the book for around 30 minutes, and then I will take over the discussion, moderate the discussion with them for around 15 to 20 minutes or maybe another half an hour, and then we'll open the panel for questions from the audience. So this is the plan for today. So Lavanya and Prasad, if you want to take it over from here.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bhaskar, for reaching out to us. Am I clear?
Yes, you are clear.
Okay, so thank you for reaching out to us. Even we are also trying to disseminate our findings, our suggestion and recommendations through various platforms. So I think it's a nice platform to be in, particularly if you are sharing your knowledge, your insights with the faculty member. So it will it will definitely be disseminated in the classroom as well. So we started actually the book launch event a couple of months back at IIM Ahmedabad, where some students were also present. So it encouraged us to connect with business schools and universities, because we found that more than the faculty, students are also interested in this subject, which is very, very encouraging sign for us. Okay, coming back to the book actually. So Prasad and I mean, we have been not exactly working together. I've been writing on this area for last 2 to 3 years. Am I right, Prasad? 2 to 3 years. 1.5 year back, we realized that okay, we are publishing a lot. So why don't you compile everything and put add more stuffs actually to write a book? And we got encouragement from a professor at IIM Ahmedabad. So Dr. Amit Garg, many of you might know him. He is a extremely influential as well as a popular person in climate finance in India. So I think he is also a member of UNFCCC and also part of the negotiation committee at the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Climate Change. Okay, so okay, let me share the PPT. Prasad, you would like to add something here before I start? Are you there? Okay, somebody. Okay, so I was just discussing that the origination of the book, which I mean, started 1.5 year back when Dr. Amit Garg at IIM Ahmedabad, since Prasad is an alumni of IIM Ahmedabad, so he encouraged him that you guys are writing a lot. Why don't you publish something out of this topic? And there will be a lot of interest from the readers, particularly policymakers and regulators, who would be very much interested to know this subject, and probably they can take some cues from here and design and implement certain policies. Okay, so since we know about climate change, so I'm not discussing what exactly climate change means because most of the participants, I believe, I'm sure they know this subject. So I'm just removing this, the impact of climate change, what's going to affect us. We know the increase in intensity of climate-induced natural events, maybe precipitation, maybe heat waves, increase in temperature, drought, sea level rise, or any other extreme weather events. So I'm not repeating these things, and rise in, it is attributed definitely rise in global emission starting from 1850s. I think the world average temperature has increased by 1.5 degree. I mean, even if there are keep on discussing that, okay, how can you limit global average temperature by 1.5 degree? But I think we have already crossed that. Coming back to India, actually, so we are starting the book from here. So climate change is a bigger problem, and we need to solve that problem. When we started writing, we gave a context. Climate change is not only a problem for the society or so, it is a challenge to the economy, to businesses, to the financial system. Okay, so how to solve that? And almost all the articles we are focusing on climate mitigation, not exactly climate adaptation. Climate adaptation is a completely different ball game than climate mitigation. For a developing country, as all of you know, that climate adaptation and climate mitigation has equal importance. Particularly, most of the developing countries they are more vulnerable to climate change compared to developed countries due to various reasons. One of the key reasons is that the economic size or per capita income or the fiscal strength of developing countries are very low compared to developed countries. They can take care of themselves, but not developing countries. And definitely, India is one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. But in this book, we are not discussing about climate change adaptation. So that's the reason we have named it net zero. So the reason we know that why it is net zero, because the global ambition to reach net zero by 2050, where India's ambition to reach net zero by 2070. But the question is that can you wait for 2070 or even if 2050? Since I already said that there are scientists who already said that, okay, so we have already crossed the 1.5 degree limit, which we aspired maybe a decade back, but now we should target that how we can limit global average temperature of 2 degree. So that should be the aspiration right now, not 1.5 degree or so. That peaking point has already we have crossed. And given the size of the carbon budget is available, I think it is close to 400 billion tons currently, and globally we are emitting 60 billion tons per annum. We can understand that how many years left to cross the carbon budget which is currently available. So there is no chance of limiting global temperature by 1.5 degree by 2050. Given that the new administration in the United States, they are climate denier, there is a possibility that the kind of incentives provided by the US government may be withdrawn in with the new administration in the United States. And there are political issues also in different countries which are forcing politicians not to really commit. Even if they have committed, they are not spending money or investing money in climate actions. Okay, so coming back to India, so the first thing what we did, try to identify the source of carbon emission. So if you can see this a beautiful chart actually prepared by McKinsey, couple of years back, I think it has not drastically changed in the last 3 to 4 years or so, 2 to 3 years. We took the chart back 2 years back. India currently emit close to 3.3, 3.4 billion tons of carbon. When I'm talking about carbon, it's a combination of carbon, methane, and other greenhouse gases. So coal is definitely the number one culprit, emitting uh, close to 30% of GHG emission. And then industrial sector, which is a hard to decarbonize sector. Somebody removed the PPT. Oh, again, I can't share.
Sir, can you please try again?
No.
1 second, sir. Sir, now check.
Yeah, now I can.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so then one is power sector, then followed by industrial sector, agriculture, transportation. So we know these things not very well, but if I talk to politicians, even the policymakers, they have limited idea what is the source of really GHG emission in the country. Prasad, you would like to add here?
Yeah, I hope I am audible and visible now.
Yes, yes, you are audible. Dr. Bhaskar, is Prasad audible to you?
Yes, yes, yes. You are audible and visible both.
Yeah,
So please go on.
yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So yeah, I kind of missed on the first few, I think minutes of this particular conversation, but I think what Labanya is trying to truly highlight is that different sectors mentioned over here and not mentioned over here have their unique contributions to the emissions matrix that we are talking about right now. And maybe one quick point that I would want to add is then going forward, I think we can elaborate that is we need a customized approach in order to understand how each of these sectors work and how is it that we can address the entire value chain in each of these sectors to cut down on the emissions and achieve the net zero target. So what do you, Lavanya? And we can again take it up later in the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so basically in our book we have mostly focused on the power sector, industry, transportation, and buildings. Agriculture, although we have focused, but not much actually compared to other sectors. Particularly as we know that agriculture sector is very sensitive in the country, not only in the country, actually in outside India as well. I think couple of months back in Europe. Farmers they were protesting against the government because the government was trying to push farmers to follow climate mitigation technologies for farming. I mean, we understand that the kind of per capita income of farmers definitely much higher in Europe. Still, they are protesting. So they think that okay, it is not going to help them. So even the government had to listen to them. So wittingly or unwittingly, we have not focused on the agriculture sector in this book. Okay, so what we need to do, if I combine, particularly starting with power sector, it means that we need to add a phenomenal, I will say, a massive amount of renewable energy in the next couple of decades. For example, we have a renewable energy capacity of we recently crossed 200 gigawatt. I think we have now 205 or 206 gigawatt, and the next 20 years we need to add close to 1000 gigawatt of renewable energy in next 20 to 30 years to reach net zero. Then definitely battery storage, since we know that renewable energy is not entirely reliable for 24/7 supply. We need must store those electricity somewhere. It could be battery storage, or it could be green hydrogen as well. Then we have also spoken about green building. Like Prasad said, every sector has its own economic characteristics and own technical challenges as well. We spoke in several chapters that how to green the commercial houses as well as the residential houses. I think these two sectors are consuming close to 17 to 18% of electricity. But if I add the entire value chain, it is consuming close to 25-26% of total GHG emission, emitting 25-26% of total GHG emission. So can you think of greening the houses? It's a combination of using energy efficient equipment, retrofitting, building new greenhouses, as well as trying to use recycling of construction materials. Even rooftop solar, currently the government is focusing a lot on rooftop solar as well. Then third is the transportation sector. But in the transportation sector, the critical point is that the existing transportation system is not going to help us to use electricity. So it means that we need to buy a massive number of, for example, electric vehicle, so that the source of electricity, source of energy, which is heavily reliant on oil and gas, it can be changed to electricity. So it means that we need to electrify our vehicles. Here we are talking about electrification. It's a combination of short haul vehicles. It could be buses, cars, two-wheelers and three-wheelers. But for long haul transportation like shipping, airlines or long haul trucks, the challenge will be very different. We need different kind of technologies there. Prasad, would you like to elaborate here on the transportation one?
Yeah. So what I would quickly also bring to everybody's attention is that we the Lavanya has very clearly demarcated in terms of the sectoral, or we are trying to bunch the solutions in some meaningful way in this book, right? And though the ambitions are I would say commendable from India's perspective and also from the global perspective, there are very unique business challenges, and maybe later on, once this presentation is over, we will have an opportunity to discuss, and I will be able to share some of the very practical issues when it comes to scaling up renewable energy, when it comes to expanding the battery storage, both for grid and also for mobility purposes, and also for green hydrogen. We have written quite extensively and are continuing to do so for green hydrogen, because that is something which is I would say an unknown, more or less, for a large number of industries, a large number of governments. So that's something which we have discussed across several chapters and across several articles. So we'll be more than happy to touch upon them later in the conversation. Uh, Again, on the green building side, we have proposed certain ideas which can help uh, adopt this particular approach for construction, be it residential, commercial, infrastructure, and so on. We have tried to provide suggestions for governments, municipal corporations specifically, in terms of how they can, in terms of making the green solutions viable. Also, parallelly, look at revenue streams which can contribute towards the exchequer, which will help them again invest into more climate action related activities for the city. And coming to transportation, again, there are very practical examples and pilot projects which are going on. I can share some examples wherein we are using green hydrogen both for, I would say, fuel cell related technology for mobility applications, and also the internal combustion engine. So you have green hydrogen which is getting into an internal combustion engine which can then run heavy vehicles. So those are some examples which I can share later on. And again, how carbon capture can essentially help us in some ways manufacture, I would say, e-fuel, which can then get into mobility applications like aviation and heavy mobility. So yeah, we can all discuss all of these topics later into the conversation. Labanya, yeah, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Prasad. Okay, then the fourth thing we also covered industrial sector. So when I'm talking about industrial sector, it is more of a consumer of energy. It's mostly I mean, in climate community, it's called hard to decarbonize industry. It's a combination of steel, cement, chemical, shipping, airlines. Because why it is called hard to decarbonize? Because this industry is the technology is designed in such a way. Prasad can throw more light since he's an engineer, not I. I mean, the technological challenges for this kind of industries is completely different than the power sector. For example, the steel industry mostly so is designed such a way that it cannot use electricity for the energy needs. Okay, it can use electricity, but for a limited purpose. Similarly, for industries like aviation or shipping, it cannot electrify. You cannot store a massive battery inside an airline, inside an aircraft, or shipping, or ship, or long haul trucks to decarbonize. It's not possible. So there are other ways to decarbonize, like Prasad said, green hydrogen. Although green hydrogen is not commercially viable, there are bioenergy, and we also discussed about recycling as well in the industrial sector, because there are some research which said that through the recycling we can reduce our GHG emission by 10 to 12% globally, and of course energy efficiency as well. Prasad, you would like to highlight something on the industrial sector before I move?
No, I think, Lavanya, one quick point I would want to make is for the industrial sector, like you rightly mentioned, industrial heat is a major, I would say, source of carbon emissions, and we have suggested some solutions in terms of how do you cut down that footprint, both in terms of electrifying it and also whether green hydrogen can be used for those purposes. We have also looked at how densified bioenergy biomass can be diverted as one of the substitutes for I would say coal in some of the applications, specifically when it comes to heating of boilers and so on. So these are some of the I would say pilots or ideas that we have proposed and discussed based on our interactions with industry experts. And yeah, I think it is definitely something which the government of India is also trying to uh, ensure when it comes to adoption by the industry, wherein they're putting in certain recommendations for blending such new energy materials for energy purposes, for heating purposes, in when it comes to hard to abate industry. So I think, yeah, that is something which we can take up in the Q&A session as well. Lavanya, over to you.
Yeah, so if we see this particular slide, because some of the technologies are commercially viable, so that's the reason it's showing that achieving materialities. But there are several technologies, because to arrive at 100% zero emission, so we need a number of technologies. But unfortunately, there are several technologies which are not commercially viable, particularly in the industrial sector, in the agriculture, in the industrial processes also, on long haul transportation. It is not commercially viable. So it means that there is some kind of market failure. So that's the reason we discussed a lot how policymakers or regulators design policies, particularly providing financial support, definitely without putting a lot of pressure on the government, on the exchequer, to make it commercially viable as quickly as possible. That part we discussed a lot in the book. It is starting from financial policies. As I said earlier, if there are technologies are not commercially viable, it means that they cannot raise capital, maybe debt capital or equity capital from the market. So you need support in the form of, let's say, credit guarantee or so from government-owned entities. There are credit guarantee support currently available by some of the institutions. Can we expand that size pool? And many of us know that there are certain countries who have set up green financial institutions as well, green investment bank as well, just to support green technology in the country. Even green setting up a green bank has been in the discussion for a long time in the country as well. Then grant and concessional capital is very important, particularly for technologies which are at a very, very early stage. Although we keep on saying that private equity or venture capitalists, they were successful, particularly in the US, to commercialize technologies on investing a lot of money during the early stage. But in reality, we have noticed that government actually, the US government actually provided a massive amount of money through grant and concessional capital to early stage technology maybe in the telecommunication sector. The grants mostly came from the US government to take it to a level where it can raise commercial capital. We can also see currently also the current government in the United States. You might know that they introduced something called Inflation Act 2 years back, where they are going to deploy close to $500 billion of capital in climate technologies. Then subsidized interest rate also, which will be also essential for some of the technologies where cost of capital matters. For example, renewable energy, for still it cost of capital matters a lot. For example, electric vehicle also, on green building. So where you need some kind of intervention by the government to subsidize interest rate so that the consumers can buy those technologies. It could be it could be electrifying, it could be electric vehicle, it could be renewable energy, it could be energy storage or anything. We also touched a little bit on financial regulation because many of us know that climate change is not only a risk to the economy, it is a risk to the financial system. So that it's a job of the financial regulator. It could be central bank or the security regulators also, who can play an essential role because they have a responsibility to stabilize the financial system. In addition to that, they can also play an important role to reorient capital flows from GHG emitting businesses to GHG reducing businesses. For example, if we see that the amount of capital still flowing to oil and gas sector in particular, it's a massive compared to renewable energy. I think in 2023, for the first time at a global level, the amount of capital went to renewable energy sector was more than fossil fuel. So it is important to understand that, okay, how we can reorient that capital flows from fossil fuel to renewable energy or so, or peripheral technology. We spoke about that. We also talk about some innovative financial instrument which can be used, and the role of institutional investors. Particularly, they have a fiduciary duty to protect the interest of beneficiaries. Since climate change is a risk to the portfolio performance, so it is important the institutional investors to be cognizant of that and integrate climate change in their investment decision. Then we also discussed a little bit about the role of international institutions, including the World Bank, ADB, or the developed countries, how they can support developing countries to reach their climate goals as well. Prasad, you would like to add more here because this is the last slide of presentation.
Oh, okay. So yeah, just one quick point which I would want to add on is that Lavanya rightly mentioned, when a project goes for a financial ask, the market, the credibility and the financial viability of the project is something which the investors look at. And here we have proposed several business models in which uh, agencies or international organizations which have a very high credit rating can participate without having a large exposure of their finances for one particular project. So what that allows the international agencies to do is to spread out their assets or specifically the financial pool that they, they have, which they wish to earmark for green energies or green technologies, and still be able to act as a multiplier for pooling in finance for the projects. So one of the uh, I would say models in one of the chapters that we discussed is wherein international organizations can act need not, I would say, directly contribute to the project, but only can provide a guarantee for a project. So what that does is it just simply increases the confidence of the potential investors for large green energy or mitigation or adaptation projects, and pools in private capital for the benefit of achieving net zero targets. So we have discussed such models wherein uh, multilateral agencies can efficiently deploy their finance across sectors across the globe to make it more potent, more effective in achieving green energy and net zero targets. So I think I'll quickly pause there, and Laban, you can take it up from here.
Yeah, thanks, Prasad. Okay, very quickly, actually, as we know that COP just concluded a couple of weeks back. So, I mean, it was a damn squib, many will say, particularly in developing countries. India has definitely blasted the developed countries at COP. So, if we see that the various estimates, what is the amount of capital required by developing countries, it's more than 2 trillion. They were asking that, okay, can you provide us 1.2, 1.3 trillion? Because all this climate mess created by developed countries, okay, not by developing countries. Although, I mean, the ask was 1.2, 1.3 trillion, but now they are saying $300 billion of capital. But the critical point is that the form of capital is going to be very important for capital mobilization. Like Prasad said, commercial investors, they will not be interested to invest their money or lend their money to businesses. One is that which is very risky, or second, it is not offering a return commensurate with risk. The question is that how we can use this international capital, particularly capital coming from public institutions, to mobilize more private capital. But unfortunately, historically, public capital coming from institutions like World Bank or ADB, even through bilateral sources, these are not really concessional in nature. Because many times government of India also contested the number provided by developed countries. For example, last in 2022, they said that we made our commitment of providing $100 billion in 2022. But if we go into little detail, we will find that most of the capital in the form of loans or equity or so, not really concessional capital. Because many times these kind of institutions, they need sovereign guarantee to provide capital. Secondly, this kind of capital, they are not risk taker. So if you see the capital structure of the projects where both private investors and World Bank or any other global institutions have invested, they are pari passu. It means that since they are not risk taker, so it is not helping in reducing the riskiness of the projects for private investors. So in the book, we have also discussed many times how this public capital can be used to reduce the risk for private investors so that we can attract a massive amount of private capital for net zero technologies. So you will find in many chapters in the book, as well as we also discussed the international cooperation, particularly sharing intellectual property rights or developing capacities of local institutions to adopt or to know to to be keep abreast with the latest net zero technologies as well. Okay, we'll stop here and take some questions. Prasad, you would like to add?
Yeah, just one quick point maybe. There are some other interesting ideas which we have shared, and which some of them have received very positive feedback. So one of them was because Labanya mentioned in the COP, right, Conference of Parties, as an annual get together for policymakers and governments. We proposed a similar mechanism for India, and that comes in with a perspective that India is a large country, and we have you know different regions having different aspirations when it comes to growth. So we just quickly propose, why not have a conference of parties at a national level, wherein say the chief ministers of all these states come together at a common place, agree on uh, what the targets are for each one of them, what are the mechanisms or what are the projects which can be implemented in a cooperative fashion. Say, for example, if some state has an upper side in uh, skilling certain technologies or providing skill sets to people uh, in a particular technology, how can the other states develop from that particular positive element which is within our domestic limits. If say some state is good at mobilizing green capital through market mechanisms, how can it help other states tap into this resource and help them also achieve net zero? So we thought, why not propose this as an idea wherein all the critical elements or critical stakeholders in the governments of different states and union territories come together and provide a unified front and a unified kind of an goal setting for the country, which can then be projected to the international world. And I'm assuming that will have a lot of credibility, wherein all political parties of all spectrums have their voices represented, and that will be a very, I would say, credible voice which foreign investors will trust, and that I think can also help in attracting more capital. That was one part which we had discussed. The second is we have also emphasized the role of digitization of the power infrastructure in the country, be that in terms of cyber security and also in terms of deploying artificial intelligence, machine learning, digital twin technologies for bringing in more efficiencies in the power sector. So, because as you would know, AI ML is one mega trend which is grabbing a lot of attention along with the energy transition. So there is an area which we feel where both these technologies, both these solutions can overlap and truly revolutionize how we look at power consumption, how we look at power generation and transmission within the country, and also that will empower the end user when it comes to understanding what is the energy consumption, what is the carbon footprint he or she has on the planet. So I think I'll stop there and over to you, and we'll be happy to dive deeper into any of the topics that we mentioned so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhaskar. We're stopping here the presentation, so happy to
Yeah, yeah,
take
yeah.
some
Yeah.
questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mr. Labanya and Prasad. It was a very engaging session, and we got to know the gist of the book. But I would like to take it a bit further in these discussions with me and also with the questions on some of the points that you have raised in the book and also in the presentation. So, we know that the book is divided into three parts. First part is about the technologies, the net zero technologies. The second part is about climate finance, and the third part is about international institutions. So we will take it in that sequence only. And so coming back to the technologies, you start with renewable technologies, and as Prasad also mentioned about the chat, so there are some of the challenges in establishing renewables in India. India has been doing well in terms of solar and wind, in terms of the capacity installed. But we still see that in terms of generation capacity, coal is predominant in India. Around 70% of the electricity comes from coal. So renewables have its own set of challenges. So could you speak a bit about renewables and what are the set of challenges that it faces here? I think Prasad went.
Prasad, would you like to start? Then I'll come in. Prasad, can you hear us?
No, I lost the last 5 to 10 seconds. I think we were mentioning about renewable energy deployment. That is what I heard, but I just missed out on the question,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah,
Yes.
the deployment of renewable electricity, because our challenge in terms of electrification is that the more we produce from renewables, the lesser the GHG we are going to emit, right? The more we depend on coal, the higher our GHG emissions will be. So this challenge of how to shift from, or whether it is feasible first to shift from coal to renewables, and if possible, how to do about it. So something on that.
Uh,
Please.
okay, so yeah, thank you for the question, and I think that is something which all of us are trying to understand. Honestly speaking,
Yeah,
sitting in industry as well,
yeah.
this is the fundamental question, no doubt about it, and we are looking at it from different perspectives, and we are slicing and dicing this problem in different ways. So first of all, I agree to you. Coal is currently the dominant, I would say, source. But one quick point is that we are trying to understand if the base load can be catered to by coal, and then the, I would say, the peak and the trough can be managed using renewable energy. That is one larger thought process in terms of just management of power. The second is we are also considering contribution of small modular reactors. Uh, are they good, bad? Can they be manageable? That is one thought. But again, bringing you back to the hardcore question of what the industry is currently looking at, uh, and we can break it down into two or three major issues. One is land. I'll be very precise here, and then we can elaborate if there is interest. So availability of appropriate land is something which is an ongoing quest for all, I would say, industry players, because uh, it is something which we do not have enough when it comes to our ambitions of growth and our ambitions of decarbonization. So that is something which is an ongoing activity wherein we are working very closely with governments to identify the right kind of land parcels for deploying large scale projects. Distributed renewable energy is also something which is of interest to a lot of corporates, and there are active dialogues going on in terms of how we can collaborate with government for the distributed renewable energy. The second fundamental problem that I would want to shift your attention to is transmission. Even if we have, say, deployed gigawatt scale worth of power generation facilities, for example, say in some parts of Gujarat, Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, and so on, the ability to move that power across large distances is something which we have to really, really work on. That is something which is a very, very active topic uh, for the government, for the industry, uh, and we definitely need to create more green energy corridors. We definitely need to have more substations put in place and identify the right kind of technology for transmission of power across the length and breadth of our country. And the third part is, how do we empower our consumers as well in terms of making the right choices in terms of energy consumption. So that is where this element of digitization of our distribution systems also comes in. I think a combination of all these three, factors is something which will help us move in that direction of net zero. And again, we can bring in how to, be very creative in terms of financing large projects. How can we finance, uh, you know, power consumption, or smart devices which can optimize power utilization? That's a separate topic altogether. Mobility, as Labanya mentioned, is a very active topic for electrification. Industrial heating is an active topic for electrification, and so on. So yeah, I think this would be my response, wherein we know more or less what is the uh, activity or set of benchmarks we need to hit in order to achieve net zero across the spectrum of applications. But there are all these major themes which we need to address in real time to achieve that particular potential. So I hope I have in some ways elaborated on what you have
Yeah,
Yeah.
asked.
yeah, yeah. Because
Let me add a couple of points here very quickly from the financing angle. So, since you spoke about climate finance, for example, we have currently 200, 210, 205 gigawatt, and we need to add 295 in next 5, 6 years to achieve that Government of India target of 500 gigawatt. So it means that we need to add 50 gigawatt per year today, 40, 50 gigawatt. So we need a lot of money in the next at least next 6 years. Okay, if I say so, the next milestone is only for 6 years, not 45 years. We're not talking about 2070. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So as per various estimates, we need around 50, $60 billion every year. $40 billion every year, actually, only for renewable energy. Okay, so $40 billion per annum is a lot of money. Okay, because historically India has mobilized maybe 13, $14 billion per annum for renewable energy sector. Now we are thinking, now the task is that we need to multiply it by 3 times. Okay, so that will be a bigger challenge. Okay, the secondly is that whether there is enough capital available in the country. The answer is no, actually. We don't have that much of capital. If I see the total amount of corporate bond issuance in the country is per year close to $110 billion. Okay, out of that 110 billion, so 70% of them are issued by banks and NBFCs, not by real industry. Okay, that one. Second part is that who are the buyers? The buyers of the bonds are pension fund and insurance companies. Because of low credit rating of several renewable energy projects, they are not buying the bonds issued by renewable energy companies. You will see that most of them are issued outside the country. And third is that since banks have still a significant exposure to the power sector, there are not enough rooms available in the balance sheet of commercial banks to provide more capital, unless we are going to change the financial regulations which will come from the Reserve Bank of India. So mostly domestically we are relying on non-banking financial companies like ERIDA, Power Finance Corporation, REC. So you will see that a massive amount of money is going to renewable energy sector. Anyway, ERIDA was set up only to provide capital to renewable energy. It means that we need to mobilize a significant amount of foreign capital, which is a risk actually, which may be a risk to the financial system if we try to mobilize a massive amount of debt capital very, very quickly, as we know that it could create some kind of macroeconomic stability as well. So this is a challenge. So the issue is that how we can mitigate those challenges by using the public capital available. That's the reason we spoke about credit guarantee, whether it can be used to enhance the credit rating of renewable energy companies so that the credit rating could be high and they can mobilize domestic capital. So that's one of the solutions we have mentioned. There are other risk mitigating instruments, for example, third party guarantees or payment guarantee also. We also discuss those in our book as well.
right, right, right. Thank you. Wonderful answer, and we will come to, I would like to discuss a bit more about the finance part later. But in your book, you have also talked about the different new technologies, for example, direct to air capture and offshore wind technologies, and you write about these technologies. I remember in terms of industrial technologies, also you have come up with some innovative solutions like a cement cess. You talk about that in your book, something called the cement cess, which could, lead to more greening of for the cement sector, which is a hard to abate sector. So, would you like to speak a bit more about because these new technologies will again need finance, right? Because they are capital heavy and they will need finance to be able to especially establish and also to be able to scale up, and also the efficiency of these technologies. For example, you also talk about carbon capture, and carbon capture is something which has been talked about for the last 20 years now, but it still hasn't scaled up in that respect the way we want it to be to scale up. For a country like India, which is capital starving, I would not say starving, but we're not capital flush in any way. So, how effective these new technologies will be? Like, what would you like to say here?
Prasad, would you like to add about discuss
Uh,
technologies?
yeah, maybe a few thoughts on that. So when you mention about offshore wind, I think and then we can come to carbon capture, direct air capture. So yes, definitely, National Institute of Wind Energy (NIWE) has they went on and they have identified very specific areas in Gujarat and in Tamil Nadu which have very high potential for offshore, and floating wind is also something which we have proposed, because as a country of 1.4 billion, land is definitely a very precious commodity, and definitely we need to be very innovative in terms of understanding how we can create that space for deploying our green energy, generating uh, you know plants or uh, facilities. So that's one point. Second is, new technologies will get discussed over and over again, simply because there is no one way of achieving net zero. It is going to be a mix of different technologies at different price points in different geographies at different times. So it is a very dynamic kind of an endeavor. It's a goalpost which has to be understood and worked on every single time through a different lens, because each of these industries have their own strengths. Each of these industries have their own vulnerabilities. So it is going to be a mix of technologies. It is going to be a basket of solutions for any large economy to decarbonize. And we coming from that perspective, and that is why we have proposed all these different technologies for consideration. Coming back to the effectiveness of uh, deploying these technologies, yes, that is an active area of work. That is an active area of discovery. But based on preliminary results and pilot projects, not just in India but abroad, there is significant scope. And one of the ways in which these technologies can be deployed at scale is through viable financial options. So again, I'm trying to just loop in a common thread across technology, finance, and policy, simply because that is how reality works. Uh, so one of the ways in which carbon capture and direct air capture can become viable, coming back to that particular topic, is that can our chemical industry absorb the carbon which has been sequestered or captured by these technologies? So syn fuel or e-fuel is something which I quickly mentioned, right? Wherein carbon dioxide is used as an ingredient to make aviation fuel or sustainable aviation fuel. So we have to come in more from the market side and understand, okay, there is a particular gap in the market. Can it be solved through the outcome or the output of one technology? So we have to integrate the technologies working from from the market and backwards. So if tomorrow there is a solution or there is a product which uses all the carbon which gets captured through direct air capture or through CCUS, nothing like it, because you have a ready market demand. People are willing to pay for that product, and that automatically makes the backward integration more financially viable and also scalable. So I think that's that's how we can approach these new technologies, wherein we try and identify a gap in the market and then try and address that market using what is available in the lab. So I think I've in some ways addressed that question. Is it okay? Laban, you can please add. Yeah.
Yeah, very quickly. So most of the technologies, actually, if I've seen the earlier remark, particularly in the industrial sector, and also, for example, Prasad spoke about small nuclear reactor as well as offshore energy. So several technologies are not commercially viable. So although you need risky investors like private equities or VCs or some corporates also, they are investing in this technology on the hope that at some point of time it will be commercially viable so that it can scale up. The issue is that if we wait for the market to reach at the level, then the adoption rate will be very high. We can decarbonize. We cannot wait for that long period. So we cannot leave it to the market to decide when to deploy capital in these technologies. As we know that how we can reduce the cost of technologies, one is that definitely there is a learning curve. And if we can increase the scale of operation and keep on developing new innovation, okay, so it is applicable to mobile phones to semiconductor chips, to solar, to wind. For example, solar industry, the cost of solar has decreased by 90% in the last 20 years because of heavy subsidization back in the beginning of 2000 by Germany, followed by China. So that what we keep on discussing in the book, that since it's a public good, climate mitigation is a global public good. So it is important that all the international institutions as well as government across the world, they should put money in the form of grants, subsidies, or concessional capital, so that the scale of economies can be increased very very quickly. Okay, because there are several technology, you will find that the loading rate is 15% to 20%. It means that if we double the size of the capacities of production, so the cost of technology can be reduced by 16 to 17%. But without the support of the government, we cannot scale up that quickly. Okay, that's the reason we are talking about. Okay, can we use grant as a many times you will also say that government becomes an entrepreneur, becomes act like an equity investor as well, and sometimes provides us subsidies. Sometimes provide, for example, concessional capital. Take the example of Erida, how renewable energy sector added more than 150 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity in the last 15 years or so, because the concessional capital was available for the renewable energy sector for a long time in the country. So that's the reason we are able to add so much of capacities. And through learning, we were able to reduce the cost of adoption of technologies. That's what kept we have emphasized in the book. Coming back to the cement sales which you have identified, the idea is that, okay, as a cement company, so if you take, I mean, cement is a oligopolistic industry structure. You'll find couple of players dominating more than 90% of market share. Okay, the idea is that, okay, you need to create some kind of competition between these players. Okay, so whatever cement sales is creating, you will invest that money in create in developing new technologies which can only be used by the cement industry. Okay, so that's the idea of the cement says. Okay, if your carbon emission is more than the benchmark, I mean, definitely government should come out with a benchmark. You need to pay some cess, and ultimately that cess is going to be used in technologies, and you are going to use the technologies. Okay, for example, although we have created coal cess in India, but unfortunately the proceeds of coal cess was used in for social welfare, not really to reduce carbon emission or so. So that was the idea. So I'll stop here and we'll
Yeah.
take more questions.
The cement companies would not be happy at what you are suggesting, I'm pretty sure.
No, corporate will never be happy actually
Yeah,
whenever you are
yeah,
trying to penalize. So
yeah,
that is all right. Okay. So
yeah.
that's the reason there is a market failure. Okay. So you are polluting,
Mm,
you are
yeah,
emitting greenhouse gases.
yeah.
Somebody has to pay.
True, true, true. Actually, I have a lot of questions, but I'm also thinking of opening it up to the audience. लेकिन audience सवाल कैसे पूछेगी? आईटी में आप हैं क्या? आईटी
Yes, sir.
टीम? ये जो मेंबर अटेंडीज है वो सवाल कैसे पूछेंगे?
Sir, they can raise their hand if
अच्छा, they
yes,
can raise their
if
hand
they
and
yes, yes.
they can ask. They can ask.
No, no. I just give them a permission to unmute themselves.
Okay, okay, okay.
After that, they can raise
Right,
their.
right, right. So, we are also opening up to questions. Till then, we will continue the discussion. If you have any questions, please do raise your hand. So then let's come a bit now to the finance part. And you have talked about finance, and in your book, you have also identified different sources of finance, right? So on one side, you talk about climate funds. On the other side, you talk about blended finance. You talk about transition finance. You also talk about the PVC funds, the clean tech startups, and you talk about how startups can also bring about changes and help in the process of mitigation and adaptation. So my question to you would be, I'll start with a bit of a more subjective question, which means that India has many different challenges, right, in terms of other problems that we are facing, problems like poverty, unemployment. Climate change is one of the different problems you are facing. and India needs finance to take care of all of its different other issues. So how important would be, for example, when you suggest in your book, like, right now also you have suggested that many of the Indian banks and also international foreign finance should provide concessional funding. So how much of a priority is climate change for India in terms of financing, in terms of financing with respect to the other challenges the country faces, like poverty, unemployment, and different other kinds of challenges that we do face. So I don't know if the question is very relevant, but I thought I'd ask you in this respect. What do you think about it?
Yeah, it's a political decision, it's a policy decision, definitely. But the key point is that India is a significant contributor of GHG emission,
Right.
and we are contributing, I think, 6 to 7% of global emission, although our population size is 16, 17%. Uh, we cannot keep on blaming developed countries. You are not doing enough, so I will not do. Okay, so as a country, so we are the largest democracy. We have also some kind of responsibilities, but it doesn't mean that you need to put all other challenges or all other significant, I will say, issues behind. These are also equally important, maybe more important. For example, poverty alleviation or healthcare, or these are energy access. Okay, these
Mm-hmm.
are more important than climate change, particularly in any developing countries, and definitely climate adaptation are also important. But we also need to remember that as a third largest or fourth largest economy or the largest democracy, we need to do something, actually demonstrate that, okay, we are the global leader doing something. Second is that in climate change, it is a collective action. Okay, we cannot say that, okay, you do that, you have the higher per capita income, you do that, I cannot do anything. So as a country, we will do what is possible in the country. For example, we'll by investing money in renewable energy, will it help to reduce the energy bill of the country, because India is spending heavily on imported oil and gas. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so by electrifying vehicles in the long run, will it help the country to preserve foreign exchange? Is that a possibility? That one. Second is that I think we have also argued that, can India be a superpower in green technology? Is that a possibility? Okay, so that's two. Can it create employment? That's three. Okay, can it provide energy access at a competitive rate? For example, rooftop solar. Okay, it can still provide electricity, particularly in those locations. Although we have grid available, the quality of electricity supply, we know that, okay, it is, I mean, you will see that only 4 to 5 hours of electricity households are getting. Okay, by investing money, by putting grants of the government in distributed energy, so you can provide energy access. Okay, there is also nexus between energy and water and and climate change as well. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
where government policies plays an important role. So we cannot discard that the climate change issue, because somehow it is related to the development issue as well. Okay, we can do whatever possible, but at the same time, there are other equal challenges before the country. I will not say that, okay, only you focus on climate change. That will not. But I will prefer that, okay, as a policymakers or even as a politician, so you need to take care of the citizens of particularly the current generation. So we are aspiring to be a multi-trillion economy in the next couple of decades.
True, true, true.
So it means that we can shift some of the cost to the next generation as well, and they can bear it.
No, interesting answer, and because you have, because the fight for climate change also might solve some of our other problems. For example, as you said, employment creation, energy access, and things like that. So we could sort of kill more than one bird with a stone. But yeah. So coming, one interesting aspect which I found in your book was your idea about clean tech startups. And we know that clean tech startups are coming up in India. There have been startups in India as well. And VC money is coming for climate change. I read somewhere that around 20 cents per dollar of VC money is going to climate change. This is the world figure, not the Indian figure, but so money is coming in terms of climate change for startups. India also has some of the interesting startups which have done well. For example, the electric vehicles companies are doing well in India. They have commercialized and they're already selling in the market. But in terms of PE and VC funding, what can we do to attract more funding? Because this is one channel which is already existing in India. India has a startup culture. India has, Bangalore as a city, startup city where there are a lot of people working and the money is already coming in. The challenge would be to attract more of the financial capital through this channel in India. So, any thoughts on this? You have dealt with it in your book, but I thought I'd ask you if there's something you want to add to this.
Prasad, you would like to take this question?
No, I think just uh, purely to attract more. I think it is a value chain approach for me. I think right from uh, you know our universities, when it comes to creating more options for PVC funds to look at, I think that's something which we need to diversify in terms of what we are offering to the world in terms of investment. So, a culture of innovation at the university level is something which you can start at. Second point is industry university collaboration. It's something which I would definitely look at because PVCs have different instruments through which they can invest, and some of it also come in when you have a large and a bankable partner getting associated with a new idea or a new concept. So I think that is something which can practically work. Policy alignment across states, again, definitely a big booster for any investor in the country. So if you have very competitive policies in terms of promoting clean energy across states, I think that is something which will, I feel, attract a lot of investors. And again, what I would say is looking for more partnerships, creating more avenues for partnering with other similar, startup ecosystems or incubators abroad, which can then help in exchange of ideas, exchange of technologies, which can then lead to larger, networks and financial possibilities. I think these are some of the things that I would look at as of now on a very, very broad level. Obviously, at a sector specific level, there can be more examples
Yeah,
given,
yeah,
but I'm just looking at it from a very, very broad, macro perspective.
right.
Yeah, just to add here, I mean, although we have a I'll say created a nice ecosystem for startups in India. Mostly we are the user of technologies. Okay, so most of the investment is going to use or the services sector. Okay,
Right.
not really creating a product which can be used. Okay, so you will see that in this space, maybe particularly in the agriculture sector, you will find a number of VC players, and even the energy sector, particularly the storage and electrifications of vehicles. So you will see the presence of number of VC players and private equity funds. The issue is that it's not get you need to create a market for liquidity. Okay, you need investors at various stages of investment, so that it will be easier for early investors to exit from investment. So since there are number of investors are very limited in the country, so many times it becomes a challenge for early stage investors to exit and find a proper valuation, which is missing in the country. And secondly, as you correctly said, that why VC players are entering into this field, because one, definitely India is going to invest so much of money, and the belief is that the cost of adoption of this technology is going to decline in the future. Okay, if you are going to reduce the cost of adoption, so the demand will be multiplied many times. will be many times in the next couple of decades or so. So that is the hope by several VC firms and private equity space in the climate technology. So that's the reason they are coming, particularly in the transportation sector, in the storage sector, but not really in the industrial sector. You will not find many VC firms and private equity firms in the industrial sector. But in these two sectors, you will find the presence of VC players because they are hoping that and they are confident that the cost of adoption of technologies is going to reduce in the future. It happened to the renewable energy sector. So VC funds and private equity, they made a significant amount of money from their investment in the renewable energy sector. And the same thing they are expecting in peripheral net zero technologies.
Okay, thanks a lot. We have few people who want to ask questions. So, Anjana or Ashita, any one of you would like to go
I
first?
think one quick point, Labanya, I think we were also discussing setting up some kind of a fund which can also go for larger investors, right? So something which is like the NIIF or the National Infrastructure Investment Fund, but more focusing on green technologies. I think we had that conversation once, right? I think you create a mechanism which can absorb these large investors, be it sovereign funds, be it pension funds, and so on, and then have a mechanism of evaluating the really promising technologies and promising startups, and then very precisely invest in those particular activities. I think that is also something which can increase the funding, which will flow into.
Yeah, sounds
Laban, am
interesting.
I audible?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's we heard you.
Yeah. Okay, Anjana or Ashita, any one of you? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I can go ahead. Sorry, I hope that's not noisy. Thanks for the presentation. That was very interesting. I especially like the idea of having a sort of COP for at the India level with representatives from the states. The only concern that I had with respect to that was whether the dynamics will play out like in the COP, in the sense of how some states, which are better off, perhaps sort of overpowering the power dynamics there. But I like the suggestion, and I hope that plays out. The question that I had was it relates to what you've mentioned a lot of times already about financial viability, and you were mentioning how we can't leave it to the market, and how I understood that your approach to that in the book is for the government to subsidize and to give grants to sort of incentivize private capital to come forward. And that relates to this argument that I came across recently. So, you often hear about how the cost of renewables has come down so much over the past decade. And so it's much more lucrative for companies and private capital to invest in renewables. The argument that I came across was that it's not about the price itself or the cost itself of adoption, but the profit margin, and specifically the profit margin of renewables relative to fossil fuels. So the argument there was how the profit margins are lower for renewables as compared to fossil fuels, and private capital would always go where the profit margins are higher. And so the argument there was about the state being more directly involved in investment. I mean, not just to the extent of subsidies, which already the renewable sector relies a lot on public support, but also about the state being more actively involved. So it's just wondering about your thoughts about that. And yeah, that relates to the point that you were raising earlier about how can't leave it to the market. But you also mentioned how public capital is not always consistent. So I was wondering about that. Thanks.
No, thanks for the question. So I agree with that with you that okay, so as a private investor, you would like to move your capital to those businesses which will offer you higher return. So again, it is up to the policymakers to decide. Okay, so since my goal is to reduce carbon emission, okay, so can I penalize the real economy, companies which are emitting carbon? So since we know about, let's say, carbon pricing, for example, okay, at some point of time, government of India, although they have started a voluntary carbon pricing mechanism in the country. But can I make it compulsory for the country? Okay, the companies which are emitting carbon, so they will pay for that. Okay, for example, in Europe, the carbon pricing is $100. Okay, if I multiply $100 with the amount of carbon the Indian economy is emitting, so it will be $300 billion. I think all the profits of all the companies will be evaporated. So definitely that's not possible in the country. But can I start with a let's say $10 per ton or so per companies? Okay, so at least that will help companies. One is that they will try to invest in technologies which can reduce their carbon emission. At the same time, as an investor, okay, I'll be discouraged to invest in technologies which are carbon emitting, so that I can reorient my capital flows to other technologies, because they can be more competitive to fossil fuel technologies, because they don't have to pay any carbon pricing. But fossil fuel industries, they have to pay the carbon pricing. So that's the only way I can see that, okay, as a policymaker, not the only way, actually, that's the best way, because there are Nobel laureate also, they suggested that carbon pricing is the best way, but there is a lot of distortion in the market, because there are social repercussions of carbon pricing. For example, a massive number of people, particularly in Odisha, Chhattisgarh, and Jharkhand, they are directly or indirectly engaged or rely on the coal sector. So they will be displaced. Okay, how can you address that? Okay, you cannot do that in a short period. You have to think about that in the next 2 to 3 decades, what I need to do. But at the same time, you cannot keep on leaving this company. Okay, you don't have to pay anything. Okay, you need to pay something. Okay, so that the capital, the investors will prefer the low carbon technologies instead of fossil fuel, which are carbon intensive in nature, because the government is not able to come out with carbon pricing. So that's the reason they're offering incentives, so that, because there is already a distortion created in the market. Okay, so there is social repercussions. So the cost of energy can increase also in the future as well. I mean, 2 days back, I was reading in the newspaper that in California, because of significant addition of renewable energy, cost and also significant investment in energy efficiency, cost of energy has increased. It happened in the Europe also. So it's a policymaker decision to decide, okay, how to optimize these policy solutions, combination of carbon pricing, so that you can penalize carbon intensive technologies, but you cannot increase too much, so that suddenly the cost of energy will increase, and suddenly you will see there will be social implications. But the other side, I need to provide incentives to the technologies which are helping us in reducing carbon emission as well. So we need to balance all these things together.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe
Yeah.
one quick point on profitability. I think that is what you mentioned. I got lost because of the network. For commercial and industrial sector, I think there is opportunity to charge a premium for decarbonization. If you provide the right kind of solutions which will help the sector decarbonize, there is opportunity for charging some premium. So it has to be a very calibrated kind of offering which has to be made. And I think it will be driven by market forces definitely, but definitely there is scope. Uh,
Yeah, thank you. I'm done. Ashita, you could go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. One concern Anjana has already mentioned, which was already in my head. And first of all, I want to thank Lavanya and Prasad for being there, and it was very informative. Though I have been reading your book, but I could not finish it, so it was really informative. And so one idea which Prasad was talking about, and Anjana has talked about it, the COP for India kind of thing. And yes, in my head also, it's a beautiful proposal. But again, how the power dynamics will play out, and again, if it's the same majority rule that prevails, who will vote for whom, that would be probably governed by other political factors than something which is a common cause. for the collective action, which Lavanya was talking about, that this is a collective problem, which is true. But there could be an issue there because the perception of the collective and the nature of the problem, but the political aspects of it may result into taking decisions which might not be apt for the situation that we're in. But I do have multiple questions. Sorry, but before I ask my questions, I want Prasad to clarify one thing for me. That when you say that land is the issue, what do you really mean by that? Like in actual terms on the field, what does that really mean?
Okay. So one is okay. Let's assume that uh, I'm talking about very specific regions. Maybe let's talk about the western part of the country, which is Rajasthan and Gujarat, which apparently will have abundant solar irradiation and so on. And there you also have large tracts of land which are not habited. If you go to Kutch, Rajasthan. But what happens is there are land development related challenges. So, for example, even if you were to set up a giga scale solar park, you should have it laid on a foundation which is stable. So, for example, if I specifically give you examples of Kutch and that you will read in the newspapers across, there is a lot of waterlogging in monsoons. So, how do you access the power plant during those times? And those are good 4 to 6 months, in some parts. Because of the terrain, in some areas, the waterlogging or the water remains there for 4 to 6 months. In some areas, it may go away in 3 months. But again, you need to invest in preparing the land for setting up giga scale factories. So that is what I meant, when it comes to land related challenges, I would say. Uh, Land acquisition, as you would know, in a country like India, in other states, is a challenge. I mean, no doubt about it. You have fragmented land holding, you have land records which are not digitized. There are, errors in the records, and I can just go on. Uh, but even for very specific areas which seem very, very favorable, non-inhabitable as of now, but still there are these challenges. And again, there are certain policies also which need to be re-looked at. So, for example, uh, there are certain local levies and cesses and charges which local governments will charge, which state governments will charge as a part of their revenue policy. Land revenue is a major source of revenue for any government, right? Be it the local government or be it the state government. So there can be optimizations which can happen when it comes to government charging, say the lease rent, say the security deposit, uh, say your non-agriculture conversion taxes, and so on and so forth. So because your larger aim is to achieve net zero, these are things which can get optimized, I would say. The second point that I would want to mention is access to these areas is also a challenge. You know, Setting up a large gigafactory factory means you have thousands of people working there, right? Providing access in terms of roads, medical facilities, markets, and so on and so forth, also has to be a common public good. Because there will be large number of private sector players who would want to set up facilities there. So these are some of the, I would say, enabling ecosystem, I would say, incentives which the government can offer to really leverage the potential of all these far-fledged, land that we have in the country. And transmission is something which I already mentioned. We need to connect these lands to the consumption centers. So that's also something which is a part of the entire puzzle when it comes to solving the energy, ecosystem related challenges. So I hope I have touched upon some of these topics that, yeah.
Yeah. So I was particularly interested in the question of land because that again, I'm happy to know that this is something which I wasn't thinking about, is where uninhabitable land can also be a problem. Because in my head, the land acquisition in itself was going to be a challenge. So that is why I wanted a clarification on that. Uh, So now my couple of questions. Uh, One thing is, during the discussion, what was mentioned is that probably World Bank or ADB can give the guarantees, which can push the like multiple investors to diversify and then invest into the climate bonds, so to say. So, but what will first of all incentivize World Bank and ADB to give that guarantee? Second, what, like in your opinion, what will be the uh, kind of guarantee that they will end up giving? Something which Lavanya has touched upon, that okay, World Bank can uh, always, there are contestations, but even if suppose there is no contestation, what kind of guarantee do you envision it could be, and why would it be incentivized to give a guarantee to the investors?
Okay, so these institutions are created to solve developmental challenges. I mean, long time back, but now we are also facing a bigger challenge. And since these institutions are supposed to create public goods, so definitely climate technologies or investing climate technology is a public good, and it is somehow considered to be a development challenges, and they must provide capital. That's I believe that it answered your question why. Okay. The second, in what way they can reduce. These development institutions, they are AAA rated companies, okay, AAA rated agencies. It means that they can mobilize capital at a much lower rate compared to companies in developing countries from international market. So they can lend at a competitive rate compared to any private investors. That's number two. And number three is that since these are large institutions, they can manage political risk more smartly. Okay, for example, if Citibank is investing in a country like, let's say, Pakistan or Bangladesh, or even if India, okay, there are political riskiness. Okay, so they may not be able to influence government or mitigate the challenges associated with the change in decisions, change in policies or politics or so. But since these are institutions which are set up by the government themselves, okay, they can mitigate those challenges more smartly than a private investors. Okay, it means that they have some kind of competitive advantage over private investors. That's number one. Number two. Number three is in what way? One is that credit. One is something called FX guarantee. If you are an investor, you want to raise capital from United States, even if you are a triple A entity, rate entity in the country, in our country, if you go to US, you will be a triple B minus because our country rating is triple B minus. You cannot be more than that. So it is going to increase your cost of capital significantly. Okay, so you cannot do anything because when the money crosses the border, in cost of capital increases significantly, many times unnecessarily. But can develop but this World Bank still they know that okay, its risk is not very significant. Can they hedge the foreign exchange risk? For example, if you are going to buy, let's say, swap option, okay, if you have a mid-size entity, the swap option cost will be 7%. Let's say you are raising at a rate of 4% in the United States, since you are triple B minus, the cost of borrowing will be 11%. It doesn't make sense for you. You can go to State Bank of India, you can raise at a rate of 8%. Okay, why do you want to go to United States? Okay, so can you reduce that cost of swap? Okay, so because if we historically if we see the depreciation of Indian INR compared to USD, it's only 3.5 or 3% per annum. But the cost of swap is much more than that. Okay, because of various reasons, because of liquidity, because of credit risk associated with the swap buyers. Okay, there are many other things. Okay, so can as a risky investors can they offer this kind of risk mitigating instruments? Okay, so that it can reduce the cost of capital. That one part. Second part is credit guarantee. Okay, because there are many agencies that are credit risk. Okay, so they are not. One is that they are not able to access capital, and secondly, even if they are able to access capital, the cost of capital is very expensive because there is a credit risk associated. Even if many times those risks are perceived, okay, it's not real. Okay, let's assume that it's even if it is real, okay, it's a public goods challenge. You need to reduce the real challenges, real risk as well. Okay, that's the reason. Can they provide? There is something called credit guarantee mechanism, like we have in the country CGT MSC, which are providing credit guarantees to MSMEs. Similarly, can we do at an international level where this World Bank and ADB can provide? Let me give you some number. There are studies by an academicians, I think 5, 6, 7 years back at a Milken institution. They found out that if you use $1 of credit guarantee, you can mobilize maybe $10 to $20 of capital, private capital. But if you provide only $1 of loan, you can only mobilize $1 of private capital. Okay, so that is the power of guarantee you can use. And historically, I mean, starting from last year actually, World Bank has come out with what is the percentage of NPA. Okay, and their percentage of NPA is less than 1%. Okay, so we can understand that what is the power they have. Okay, if you are not able to lend, why can't you give guarantee so that you can leverage your public capital? We need to remember that what is the size of all these institutions. If I combine the balance sheet of World Bank, ADB, and all the multilateral institutions, it will be still lower than 1 trillion, and it will not be able to provide capital only to India. Okay, forget about uh, more than 100 developing countries. How can they provide capital? So it means that you need to smartly use the public capital available with these institutions who are set up to provide development finance. Okay, they are not set up to provide capital to industries which can anyway raise capital. Okay, it's a long discussion. I'll keep on discussing, so I'll stop here.
I know. Even I have follow-up questions to the same thing. Just a brief one. Okay, World Bank, yes, will give guarantee based on, okay, the development idea, but it also comes with conditionalities. If we look at the example of Sardar Sarovar Dam, it came with a lot of conditionalities while the loan was given for development, so to say, and finally World Bank withdrew its funding. Uh, so there could be those kind of challenges. That's what is going on in my head. That's just, and we can personally have discussions on this. I'm just uh, uh, following up on Anjana's question and your answer to it about carbon pricing. And I actually really second the fact that yes, it can lead to displacement of communities. Suppose you're pricing coal, etc. But not only that, wouldn't it also lead to transfer of this pricing to the consumer?
Yes, I said earlier because in the US, even if many parts of Europe, energy cost has increased recently, although I cannot blame it only to renewable energy. For example, 2 days
Yeah.
back, I read a newspaper in California because they are investing a significant amount of transmission so that there will be no wildfire incident like that what happened couple of years back. I mean, you cannot say that, okay, my cost of energy has increased because I try to protect the wildfire, stop wildfire. Okay, somebody has to bear the cost. Okay, initially you are not able to cover that, and you face the burden. Okay, so
Yeah.
either you face heat wave of 55 degree or you are willing to pay 10% or 20% additional cost for your, I mean, increase in your energy bill. So it is a choice of people. Okay, and the policymakers need to rebalance of 20% of energy cost or 50 degree of temperature in the country. Okay, so
I know, but then looking at the Indian context, I'm just also wondering
yeah,
multiple
yes,
multiple
agreed.
stakeholders, no, in the
Yeah,
same.
yeah. At the same time, I mean, definitely you need to see that if I can shift the burden to the next generation, okay, the cost burden. For example, if I increase the budget, for example, although there are fiscal deficit challenges the country will face, but there are clever ways to do that. So government keeps on doing that, okay, so that the burden can be shifted to the next generation because they can bear a higher fiscal deficit compared to the current generation because our country economic size is very small, still very small, per capita income is low. So can we do that? Okay, the cost of energy that can be shifted to the next generation. That's one way. And secondly is that okay, maybe charging somebody else, maybe top 1% of population, okay, they can pay the wealth tax. Some people may not agree, but they will say okay, you are a socialist. But looking at the distribution income in the country, I don't agree that arguing that okay, that should be wealth tax, particularly for top 1%. I think it will run well. Otherwise, I mean, see the distribution income of the country. Okay, it's a different discussion altogether.
Okay, you you said it, and I know that this may result in people saying that you are a socialist, but yeah, but
Prasad, would you like to
no
add
harm in
here
that
something?
too, actually. But yeah,
I think Prasad may
Prasad,
have some point, may
yeah,
have some points. Prasad?
I can't see him.
No, no, sorry,
Has
sorry. The issue is that I am, at an airport, and maybe in the next
yeah,
20 minutes I'll have to walk in to the
we
aircraft.
we
But
will
what I
we
would,
will leave this.
yeah, uh,
Yeah,
I think what I would just want to add, before maybe I can log out is that. So one of the ideas that we proposed in the book was that one of the methods or modus operandi through which capital can be efficiently deployed, say from multilateral agencies to green energy projects, was to only guarantee the interest component of the debt. Say, for example, let's assume there is a debt which a green energy developer is taking from a private sector company. Let it be a bank. So, is it possible to only in some ways guarantee the interest component of such a debt? Uh, so what that offers is a large amount of capital from the multilateral agency will not get locked in, and these guarantees get invoked only when there is a default which is made, right? So what happens is the multilateral agencies themselves have a very stringent way of shortlisting such projects. That is one level of safety that comes into play. And the second is because your amount is comparatively lower, say for example, as compared to directly investing in a project. This is just a bank guarantee which is lying in a bank which is not getting invoked and still is getting utilized, so to increase the credit worthiness of the project. So are these some of the mechanisms that can be deployed to increase the efficiency of the capital which multilateral agencies can deploy for different kinds of projects? That is something which we were trying to explore as well. So I just thought, this can be one of the thoughts which are related to what you were discussing in terms of how World Bank and the IMFs of the world can contribute more efficiently for green energy transition. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. And thanks a lot for having me. Uh, Lavanya, you can. I don't know if you are able to see me right now, but I've just relocated.
we are able to
And
see you. But let's Siddharth come in, and I think there is just one question in the Siddharth. There is a question in the Q&A by Anjana Ramanathan. If you can, uh,
Oh, she has a does she have a question? So we can let Prasad.
can
Thank you.
huh,
Thanks a lot, Prasad. I don't want to stop you because you are at the airport, so I don't want to like
yeah, so these
stop
days the
you.
flights get delayed very frequently, and I just happen to be one of those
Okay.
unfortunate passengers. So I'm still
Okay.
stranded.
oh
But anyways, now is my opportunity to go back. Thanks a lot, everybody, for this opportunity. Looking forward to connecting with each one of you over
yeah, we'll
an email
physically
or LinkedIn
definitely
message.
Yeah.
meet and
We'll
invite
connect.
you
Yeah,
We'll
at the
connect. Thanks a
university.
lot.
and yeah,
Yeah,
Thanks a lot for coming.
thank
Okay.
you, thank you, thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
thank you.
Lavanya, thanks a lot. Please continue your interesting conversation.
Bye bye.
Lavanya, sorry to hold you back. It is such an interesting conversation that Q&A. Okay, somebody has a question. Okay, Anjana has a question. So let me read this, what she has to say. Anjana also works with us in this constellation. So she says that, hi, this is Anjana. Thanks to both the speakers for elaborating about climate finance. It has been very informative. My question is to Labanya. You spoke about developing countries and said we can't blame the developed countries always. Now, my question is, given our political atmosphere, what further steps would you suggest that developing countries should take to tackle climate change? A big question, I think, but would you like to take it up?
No, yeah, it's a big question. Like I mean, I need to summarize my entire book.
Yeah,
I mean, although it doesn't cover everything. So, as a government, definitely we need to take care. I mean, that's the reason in economics we keep on talking about generational shift. Okay, can we shift some of the burden to the next generation? That's what I mean. All the time, politicians have been doing. Okay, they shift the burden to the next generation. If we, I mean, irrespective of climate mitigation or climate adaptation, if we don't invest in this, so basically, as we know that there will be more drought, there will be more cyclone, more flood events in the future, and we are not investing enough in both climate technologies, climate mitigation, and climate adaptation. Okay, so because we are going to spend money on other things, and which are giving us, I will say, votes or so, which may not be so important for the country, okay, even for the society. So we cannot leave all the time to the people that okay they can take the right decisions. Okay, how the government is going to spend the money. Okay, that one part. That's more of a political discussion rather than the climate policies. But secondly, I need to see that what is the marginal cost of abatement or adaptation, both? Okay, because what is the least cost method of mitigating or reducing carbon emission? That what any developing country should follow. Okay, what is the least cost? It's a renewable energy. I need to add more renewable energy capacity. Okay, that's one. Secondly, electric vehicle. There are certain segments in the electric vehicle. They are more or less commercially viable. So it means that as a policymaker, I'll find a way to promote electric vehicle. Okay, it's commercially viable. People can buy, let's say, two-wheelers or three-wheelers. And maybe after 10 years, once I decrease the source of energy from coal to renewable energy, I can reduce the carbon emission also. That's marginal cost of abatement will decide how the policymakers is going to design the policies, okay, so that they can optimize the limited amount of public finance available with the country, okay, with the government. That one part. Second part is the climate adaptation. So we should not ignore that most of the climate adaptation is somehow is a development activity in a country. Okay, let's talk about flood events, talk about heat waves, or increase in temperature, or agriculture. Everything is affected by climate change nowadays. Okay, so it means that we need to invest in climate adaptation. We don't have a choice. Okay, several times Reserve Bank of India in the last 2 years they have said it is a risk. It is creating inflationary pressure in the country, particularly in food price. So as a government, I cannot say that I will not invest in climate adaptation because it's a developed country problem. They will invest. They will not invest in climate adaptation because the benefit will be enjoyed by the local people. Okay, so I, as a government, I must invest in drought resilient project, in climate resilient agriculture system that will help farmers to still produce goods even if your temperature touches 45 degree, even if there is a flood events. Okay, I need to identify those locations. I need to invest in roads or infrastructure which can mitigate all these risks emanated from climate change. Climate adaptation is a purely development challenge. Okay, it's not really a climate mitigation. I mean, if you see the government of India stand, many times also they blend climate adaptation with development projects as well. So that's what I'll suggest that okay, you cannot ignore this risk.
right, right, right. Yeah, I think, does anyone have any other questions? Okay. So thanks a lot, Labanya, and thanks a lot everybody else for joining with us with this interesting book talk. And if you want, you can also buy the book. It is available on Amazon. And it's a very interesting book, and you will get a blueprint of how India should, go about achieving net zero. So thanks again, Labanya. It was great having you here, and we had very interesting discussion. And thanks to everybody else as well. Okay,
Thank you, Dr. Bhaskar, for inviting us and share our ideas. Nice to speak to all of you. Thank you.
it was.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Lavanya. Yeah,
Thank you.
very
Bye.
interesting. We'll have this more discussions.
Yeah, we'll keep discussing. Yeah, we are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.